So my friend Shuhei Yoshida, formerly of PlayStation's indie team, has been making a lot of headways in regards to his internet circuit, talking to different people about his time, his stint at PlayStation. There's been a lot of back and forth. Did Jim Ryan stab Shuhei Yoshida in the back? Was Shuhei Yoshida maybe incompetent in some type of way why he lost his job? A lot of stuff we're going to parse right here, try to make sense of it all. I'm going to use my Fortune 500 experience because you got a lot of people talking about this on the internet that don't know what they're talking about. And they're trying to parse this and they're chopping this all up. But we're going to hit this with a scalpel so you can understand what's going on. What's up, people? It's your boy, MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, MM2K Gaming, back again with another episode of Quick Dose. This is where we talk about the latest and greatest in the video game news. And man, oh man, do we have a special one for you today. But do us a huge favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, rock those bells for notifications, please, so you know when we're dropping these doses. And check that bell, make sure it's selected to all. So there is no confusion on what information of ours or what content of ours you're going to get access to. All right, let's talk about it. So Shuhei Yoshida is making the rounds. He's talking to a lot of people. There's been a lot of controversy happening because of these talks. And you got fanboys flipping and flopping everywhere. You got fanboys that want to see PlayStation go the way of the dodo bird, sitting there saying, see, PlayStation is in trouble. Ha ha ha, Jim Ryan. You got other people that are saying, oh, no, Jim Ryan's a saint and he did everything great. And no. Maybe Shuhei was a little bit incompetent, but as always, truth is always somewhere in the middle. Now, let's be honest and let's be transparent, because there are things that have been happening in number as it relates to PlayStation leadership. Not too long ago, we kind of had this happen, and it even had your boy confused, right? All right, so what is this? Okay, in May of last year, there was a new leadership structure formed at Sony Interactive. What was that new leadership structure? Well, not Shuhei Yoshida, Nishino, and Hideki Nishino and Hermen Hulst were awarded CEO positions within SIE. And Hiroki Totoki, who was the CFO and COO, was acting as the interim CEO of SIE as Jim Ryan had stepped down and retired. Hiroki Totoki, a position was created for him to be the chairman of SIE, right? In addition to his roles doing everything else, right? This confused me, and it confused a lot of people. And honestly, it confused me because the headline people got it wrong, but I will admittedly, PlayStation didn't correct them. You know what I'm saying? And this is where I kind of get like a little agitated with PlayStation. Like, you don't want to address every little stupid mishap on the internet, but when people get your business structure egregiously wrong, address it. A lot of us thought because of the headlines that they were co-CEOs of SIE. Like there were two CEOs put in charge of SIE, and that would be the new structure because it's this new structure, right? So when this happened earlier this year, where Nishino was awarded the sole role and president and CEO of SIE, right? Because it says here, new leadership at Sony Interactive Entertainment. A lot of us assumed, hold on, they both were already CEOs of SIE. So because they both were already CEOs of SIE, Hermen Hulst must have been demoted. And after, a couple of conversations and stuff on the internet, people were saying no, but they weren't pinpointing why that wasn't the case. But the only person that was pinpointing why was my good friend William Aguilar. He's a good friend of the channel. Shout out to Will. He's been a supporter since way back in the PNTS network Discord days, right? I think if my memory serves me right, we gave away a PlayStation 4 Pro as a giveaway in there, and Will was the winner. So that's how far back he goes with supporting the platform. I had a conversation with Will, and I'm like, Will, like, you're the perfect person to help me research this. I believe Herm was demoted. Pay not affected, just job grade due to this move. It looks to me Nishino simply was made the solo CEO. Will said no, he wasn't demoted. The position of CEO of SIE was unfilled, right? So he clarified it. Nishino and Herm Hulst were CEOs within SIE. And then my good homie, I can't find the tweet, but my good homie, King Thrash Gaming also clarified too. He said the way it looks, Moss, is that these guys were both made CEOs within SIE, and they were battling to see who would take over SIE solely. And of course, Nishino won. And either way, I'm happy with the outcome. You know what I'm saying? As long as it ain't the other way around, I'm happy with it. But because I've done this for 25 plus years, I've created job functions. I know how this stuff works. I said, hold on. If they were both CEOs of SIE, somebody got demoted, but that's not the case. They were both CEOs within SIE. And as our good friend William Aguilar states, the CEO of SIE was left vacant. Hiroki Totoki was just made a temporary chairman with the plans, apparently to groom him and have him become the head of Sony. He's now the CEO of Sony altogether, right? So, with that being said, was a little bit of confusion, but based upon my experience, we were on the right track as far as describing how the business particularly works. It's just that with the media, the way they messed stuff up, the way Sony didn't confirm it, and kind of like the vagueness of their original message, it was hard to catch that they were CEOs within SIE and the original CEO position of SIE was left vacant. There's no such confusion this time around. I want to show you guys something, explain something, because as Shuhei Yoshida has been working the circuit, he's been explaining his time at PlayStation, giving us a lot of tasty tidbits, just giving us some insight. None of it really shocking if you know how business works, but he gives you some tasty tidbits to reinforce things if you understand how, the sausage is made. All right. Shuhei Yoshida really appreciated indie game role created by Jim. It mentions here in comments which went viral, much to the executive's surprise, the well-loved industry icon revealed when ex-CEO Jim Ryan asked me to do the indie job, the choice was to do that or leave the company. Now, that hit the internet. Everybody said they hated Jim Ryan, right? Jim Ryan is a problem. He should have never been the head of SIE, da-da-da-da-da. Why were people saying this? People were saying this because Shuhei Yoshida is a legend. He's known for spearheading and really monitoring and maturing like one of the biggest seismic shifts in recent PlayStation history. And what is that? God of War. They now had another studio competent enough to bring quadruple A, we're going to steal that term from Ubisoft, quadruple A type of games, and not just have it in the hands of Naughty Dog over at Sony. Everybody loved Uncharted, and then everybody loved The Last of Us even more. People weren't sure if across the board Sony could deliver at that level with other studios. And Santa Monica broke that motif and said, yeah, now we got something that may be just as big, if not bigger, than what Naughty Dog creates, right? And then the rest is history. God of War 2018 came out. Yoshida's known for talking to Cory Barlog, telling him, nah, this is not what we need right now. You got to go back and redraw this, and it becoming a stellar franchise, a stellar reboot of the franchise. God of War 2018, so fantastic. It made me a PlayStation hater really changed. Just that single game opened my eyes and said, hold on, maybe I've been misjudging PlayStation all along. And then Last of Us 2 came out and the rest is history. Now, that being said, Yoshida's infamously known for that. If you look even more recently, even though he was put in the indie role, Yoshida was known for bringing a Stellar Blade, which in my opinion, and I think a lot of people feel this way, is probably of the best exclusives that PlayStation has this generation. It's particularly my favorite this generation. I love Stellar Blade. Can't get enough of it, right? Yoshida discovered that and brought that over, okay? And supported that and made that the great game that it is. Yoshida over the years has had a special touch on games that just cannot, it's hard for it to be rivaled. Another example, you know that Yoshida was responsible in signing over Naughty Dog from Universal. It was originally Phil Harrison's team that discovered them at Universal, but there needed to be a second sign off with Phil Harrison in order to bring them over to PlayStation. Yoshida observed the work, surveyed the team, and said, yeah, we need these guys, and help make that deal complete. Yoshida's legend cannot be, it can't be trampled on at all, right? And the reason why I'm emphasizing on this is because there's rhetoric out there, and there's rhetoric from people that I like that are saying, well, you know what? Now that we're going to get you're going to see where Yoshida kind of clarifies his comment about he was given no choice. He expands on even further. There's rhetoric out there that, maybe Yoshida just didn't do a good enough job. It's not what happened. Like I said, the truth is always in the middle, and it's important for us to not form our judgments based off of limited information that we got within the first 5 minutes of now. You got to go back and do some research. I know a lot of us are pressed for time. Trust me, I have 2 businesses. I got a full-time job, and I do this. I have no time. You know what I'm saying? But I still do my research because I got to know what's going on. I can't just surmise. It doesn't make me feel good to just sit here and theorize about stuff and not really know if my theories hold any weight or any water. I got to know what is actually going on, okay? So let's look at Yoshida's clarification or further deep diving of what he was saying in regards to the whole indie position, right? After the backlash towards Jim Ryan. So it continues, the article continues, it says, now in the Sacred Symbols Plus interview paywall, Yoshida's explained the indie role was created specifically for him after a series of studios had publicly criticized PlayStation's approach. Quote, Jim was worried about the situation with indies, and to his credit, he really supported me within the company and sent a message that is very important to support our partners, including indies. So I really appreciate Jim doing what, and I really appreciate his suggestions to do this indie work in the position he created. I really don't think anything bad about Jim. If anything, I'm really grateful for how he helped and supported me for the past 4 years. Okay, so in response to that, people are now taking to the internet and they're saying, see, guys got it all wrong. Jim didn't demote Yoshida. Yoshida wanted this position and Jim created it for him. And maybe Jim felt like he had to move him because Yoshida just wasn't good at what he was doing anymore, despite the fact that we got Stellar Blade from Yoshida, even though that was outside of his bounds, right? You know what I'm saying? As he's discovering this stuff. Okay, so let me give you just a little bit of transparency here. I worked at a management level in the Fortune 500 space for 25 plus years. I managed managers. I've done a lot of special projects. I've helped draft uniform commercial code that deals with a lot of important transactions in the business world. I've helped draft uniform commercial code. Look it up. You don't know what it is. I don't have time to break it down here. And this is a video game podcast. I want to turn into something else. All right. I've also created positions. I've demoted people. I've seen people demoted. I've been demoted. I've been promoted. This was a demotion. Like, this is not like, the confused wording that happened with the whole SIE CEO thing. This was a demotion. And some demotions, all demotions are not viewed negatively or done as a punishment. To help you understand, let's look up the definition of the word demotion. Here is the definition of the word demotion. It is give someone a lower rank or less senior position, usually as a punishment, but it's not always as a punishment. How can I say that? I was demoted. I was actually demoted twice. And both times I was demoted was voluntarily. What happened? The first time I was demoted, it was after we were merging. It was sold to us that we merged with another company out of the state. The particular area that I worked in, all of our technology was way more advanced than the company that we were merging with. We knew, all of our people just had more experience. The team that was merging with us, they were affected by 9/11. So they had to move. They actually were stationed in the World Trade Center. And after the World Trade Center happened, they had to relocate to another area. And when they relocated to another area, only the most senior people stayed, of course, because they had to relocate somewhere else. And only local people worked there, right? So the team that was there at the time had only been there for a few years, where you had a lot of us at the time that this transition happened. We were there for over like 10 years at that time. Okay. So we were more versed. We had better technology. We were just, if there was going to be any redundancies or synergies, it should have likely come from them. Well, I started and others started to personally see that we were the people that were being synergized. You know what I'm saying? And being let go. And plus, where they're from, well, we know the World Trade Center was in New York. We're in Pennsylvania. Cost of living in New York is a lot higher. So if you're trying to save money, you're going to go with of course, the most least efficient, the less capable, and the most costly people that are around. That wasn't happening. It started becoming clear to us that we were not merging. We were bought out. And because of the situation of us being bought out, a lot of us said, hey, you know what? Because in the state of Pennsylvania, there was a law. I don't know if it still exists. It most likely does, because we're a Commonwealth. But the law was, hey, if you get bought out and they got to lay you off, your compensation package like pretty much doubles, and they got to send you to school for 2 years on their dime. So you had a lot of people lining up saying, oh, I want that. I want that one. And guess what? I was one of them. Now, you're not supposed to ask to be laid off, of course. But, you had a lot of people just, nudging senior management. Yeah, man. Hey, look, if it happens to me, man, I wouldn't be mad. You know what I'm saying? Just throwing it out there. All right. I was one of them. My boss did me a solid and was like, okay, well, currently in the position that you're in, there's no way it's going to happen. Your position is too critical. I have to move you. So what I did is I trained my managers on my function. They moved me into like a off support role, right? And like, it's very similar to Shuhei Yoshida's role, where they created a role for me to do some specialized stuff that they knew I would be good in, that maybe I can knock out until the time would come that, I would get laid off or whatever. In Shuhei's case, even though they didn't want him in the senior position that he was in, even though he was taking a lesser role in working with indies, they felt like his knowledge and his know-how was still valuable, and they did have an area of need. Indies wasn't the most critical area of need for PlayStation, right? But it was still an area of need, and we can create this position and have Yoshida here. We're not going to totally disrespect him and lay him off. Yoshida's a legend here, but we don't want him in the leadership role that he had. So they created this area for indies for him to tackle, and he did a great job in doing so, as they thought he would. It's still a demotion. Even though he still reported to Jim Ryan, it's still a demotion. Whenever all it takes for you to be demoted is given a lesser senior role. Head of Indies come on. Are we going to argue that head of Indies is not a lesser senior role than president of Worldwide Studios? Now, I don't know if the demotion came with a change in the job grade. I've worked on that. I've created positions before. I don't know if it did all that. Now, normally when you get demoted, that doesn't mean you get less pay. It just means that the job grade that you're in, you know what I'm saying? It affects your compensation as far as how far you can get raises. I mean, you know, how much your raises can be and all that other stuff. Again, I'll explain that at a later time, but I don't know how deep the demotion was, but it was a demotion. He got, again, let's go back and look at the definition. Giving someone a lower rank or a less senior position. Same thing happened to me. It happened to me a second time, and for the last time for the position that I'm in now. After what ended up happening is, instead of me getting laid off the way that I wanted to, a whole bunch of crap happened. I ended up becoming an independent contractor, and then they brought me back temporarily to manage because they were short on managers. And I'm like, oh my God. And I wanted to get out of it. I really did want to get out of it. And I was fortunate again. Another opportunity presented itself. I once again nudged people and was like, I don't want to do this. And I see that you guys need special projects, someone with a lot of understanding of a lot of how all these systems work. How about I take the function that I'm doing, specialize, I take that with me, and I convince these people that they manage it. So you guys ain't got, because it was troublesome and a lot of people couldn't understand what I was doing. And the parties agreed. The problem was, it wasn't like a lateral move for me as far as job grade was. It was a demotion. It was a lower job grade than what I was in. I could still get my salary, but I had hit the ceiling of that other job grade. And so my raises were next to nothing or minimum. You know what I'm saying? The only thing I could qualify for were certain bonuses. Okay, if they applied to what I was doing. I couldn't get the other bonuses that applied to my other job grade, right? Again, I don't know how much of that applies to Yoshida, but I took a lesser role because I wasn't managing. I was doing some special projects that was a lower job grade, right? And that's kind of the role that I'm in now. And I was willing to take it because I didn't have to be at work. I'm working on something now to where the only day that I get off and I don't have to be on site is Fridays. I get to work from home for Fridays, but this is only temporary. My normal job function requires me to just work from home Monday through Friday. Couldn't beat that with a stick. So hell yeah, I'll take it. It was a demotion though, right? So I'm sorry it took me that much time to break this down to you and explain it to you, but just so you know from a corporate level how this stuff works. It was a demotion. All demotions, even though most demotions are like, oh, as a punishment, all demotions are not a punishment. Sometimes it's just simply, we're moving you out of a role, we're giving you a lesser role, and that lesser role part is the only thing that's needed for it to be considered a demotion. You can like your demotion. Your demotion can put you in a better situation than you thought than you were in previously. And in Yoshida's place, he probably was told, look, you're not going to have the leadership role as high as you did as head of Worldwide Studios, but we want you to be in charge of Indies. And he probably sat there, thought about it, and was like, you know what, this is probably better for me because I was contemplating retiring anyway, right? And he said himself, he did the indie role until he felt like Hermen, Hulst, and the company was in a good spot, and now he's retiring. So, yeah, all right. It was a demotion. Jim Ryan didn't want him in the leadership role anymore, but he knew that Yoshida had a lot of value. Now, why would Jim Ryan not want Yoshida in that leadership role anymore? Well, Jim Ryan was ushering a new era within PlayStation where it was going under Western and particularly European leadership. So there was a mass exodus of a lot of people. Got to remember, Sean Layden had left. I think recently before that, Andrew Hulst was gone, but it was Andrew Hulst America. I can't remember if he lived in America or not. Then you have Shuhei Yoshida that was moved to Indies, and then there was something else that was being talked about too from our good friend David Jaffe. Now, David Jaffe got a lot of flack for this because of the way that he framed it. He had put out a tweet saying, oh my God, I got something catastrophic to tell you about. Oh, something crazy, something very bad's happening at PlayStation. And we're thinking PlayStation shutting down, they're losing half of their exclusives or something like that. What he was trying to orientate was this person that you see on the screen, Connie Booth, who was a producer of a lot of the biggest hits that made PlayStation who it was. She's credited, as you can see here at the time, for 121 games. Can't see all the games, but a lot of them were big hits at PlayStation. She was leaving. So she had like a huge oversight role of a lot of these games on what was good, what wasn't good, kind of like how Yoshida did with God of War 2018. And David Jaffe, due to his ties with people still at PlayStation, said this is not going to be a good move for them. And the way it was explained, though, is that Jim Ryan and Hermen Hulst just simply, out of nowhere, told Connie and her team to get the hell out of there. And she was an industry steward for like 31 years. And what it probably was is, even though there were reports out, the rumors out there that to the contrary, that she did approve a lot of these games as a service titles, it could be because she wouldn't approve of them. I think the same with Shuhei Yoshida. Like, Jim was going in a different direction. And because Jim was going in a different direction, the people that thought the old way, he wanted to get rid of. And that's why he brought in Hermen Hulst, who really didn't have that much of experience at PlayStation. He brought him in because he felt like this is somebody that I can groom, that can be my right-hand man, can be my Robin to my Batman as we usher in this new PlayStation era. I don't think it had anything to do with competency. It was like, we want to do something new. We're going to get rid of the old people. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's contradicted because Shuhei signed off on Concord. Here's the thing. Before Jim Ryan, and we covered this extensively, you got to look at our content. Before Jim Ryan had his nervous breakdown over ABK and started tripling down on games as a service, Sony had been talked about pursuing games as a service. Why? Because they looked at their top 10, 20 games even before Jim Ryan took leadership and said, our games are now being taken over by games as a service and we don't really own any of them. So this was something that they've always wanted to try and pursue in the first place. So yes, when Yoshida was in charge, he signed off on Concord and working with Firewalk Studios. And I think what ended up happening is, if my memory serves me correct, Jim Ryan is the one that bought the company. There's a big difference. Yoshida signed off on the game. I think it was Jim Ryan that decided to buy the company and make it theirs. It was just going to be an exclusive. And let me tell you something. The same guy that went over and quality checked God of War 2018, had he still been in charge, believe you me, and this is why I say people got to respect Shuhei Yoshida's gangster. Don't talk about my boy Shuhei Yoshida. Talk about, well, maybe he wasn't competent. I love y'all, but y'all got to do y'all research. If Shuhei Yoshida is still in charge and they buy Firewalk Studios, Concord ain't launching like that, son. It's not. So yeah, Shuhei may have signed off to make the game exclusive. I'm not sure what role he played as far as signing the company over, but regardless, if Shuhei is in charge and not Herm Hulst, we're not getting that mess. Okay? So let's make that abundantly clear. I think Shuhei was just trying to be a stand-up person to say, hey, look, stop attacking Jim. I signed off on Concord to try, because he don't care what y'all think about him. He's going off into the sunset. And he knows that what his worth is. But again, the truth is somewhere in the middle. He did not approve of this Concord that we got that only lasted like, what, 14 days or 10 days or something like that? Shuhei didn't sign off on that. He liked the direction that they were going with the game, and he thought it had promise. And I believe what he signed off on was for it to be an exclusive. Now, if he signed off on a company to join as well, okay, fine. But again, and I know I sound like a broken record, but anybody that knows. If Shuhei is overlooking that game, it's not launched until it's a lot better than what it was. If Connie Booth is still there, she's looking at that game like, what the hell is this? And why do we have the Raining Men girls? Why we got characters that look like the weather girls? It's raining men out here. You don't know what I'm talking about? Go check out an old video of ours where we cover we cover Concord. But all right, I babbled on long enough. What are your final thoughts on this? My final thoughts on this are, look, I'm not going to, the truth is in the middle. Jim Ryan was not horrible. I'm gonna use a football analogy, an American football analogy, and try to follow me here and look this up if you need reference to any of this. Jim Ryan reminds me of Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin succeeded the former coach. Why am I forgetting his name? Bill Cowher. He succeeded Bill Cowher, who had won a Super Bowl, had one of the greatest lineups in football, with Ben Roethlisberger and Troy Polamalu and all those people. And those are people that Bill Cowher discovered. So Bill Cowher decides to retire, and he gives the keys with all those assets to Mike Tomlin. And really, Mike Tomlin was a great person to carry the tradition with what Bill Cowher had started. He did. And as a matter of fact, there are some things that he's done better than Bill Cowher. Like overall during his tenure, Mike Tomlin has a better overall win record, I believe, than Mike Tomlin, win versus losses record. He's the most winningest coach, and he's had more winning seasons, I believe, than Bill Cowher. That's fine. But in the long term, since those assets that Bill Cowher brought to him, the Ben Roethlisbergers, Troy Polomalus, and all those other people, since they've retired, Mike Tomlin has done nothing substantial to bring back that success, being AFC champion multiple times, winning the division, winning multiple playoff games. Mike Tomlin has not seen that success on his own, building his own assets. So even though for the short term, Mike Tomlin did a lot of great things and really you could argue exceeded Bill Cowher in some things, for the long term, he's created some heartache, right? That's Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan did a lot of phenomenal stuff. Like the way that he's carried the PlayStation 5 to success, despite the supply restraints, regardless, despite the pandemic, Xbox was starting to see some surge. They were winning NPDs and stuff like that because you couldn't get PlayStations. Jim Ryan stayed steady and firm, and then once got the supply back up, and the rest is history. Obliterated Xbox to the point to where now they are putting their games on PlayStation in order to survive and get to a quote unquote high margin business, as Tim Stewart says. They discovered Helldivers. He carried in God of War Ragnarok, Return on all those games. He did a great job with the assets and stuff that were already set up for him. When it came time for Jim Ryan, Marvel Spider-Man 2, like, look, Insomniac was already Insomniac, so he was handed the keys to an already pristine car, and he drove it great. The problem is, he got to a road check. He had some alcohol in the back, panicked, and drove the Porsche through the road check, banging it up a little bit for the long term. And now it's got to be worked on and fixed in some ways. That's the Jim Ryan story. You can't say that Jim Ryan was a complete failure and a mistake. I think, though, Sony leaning so much on Western leadership probably was too heavy-handed, because that's what led to, this whole boneheaded approach towards we got to go full in games as a service. And we're going to talk about this during the podcast, so stay tuned if you're watching this as a separate video, or if you're watching this as part of the podcast, just stay tuned. even allowing Ben Studios to bid in for live service games, that was a boneheaded move, right? So Jim Ryan's history it's a little mixed. For the immediate short term, I think if you were going to make a change, you could have put PlayStation in no better hands. But there's definitely some things for the long term that have been problematic. You know what I'm saying? Hulst definitely in the role that he was in. If it was me, I would have left Yoshida there, gave him the function of the indie development team, and said to Yoshida, I want you to give more responsibilities of worldwide studios to Hulst. We're grooming him for the future, but I need you to look over what's going on with, you know what I'm saying? I need you to look over what's going on with the, with indies. That's happened with me before. I was given a special that thing where I said I wrote the uniform commercial code. That was a function within itself, but they gave it to me because I have a lot of knowledge on it. So what I had to do was just relegate some of my responsibilities to my management team. Yoshida could have stayed where he was at, but Jim Ryan wanted to clean house. That's simply what happened. And he hedged his bets. A lot of it worked for the short term. For the long term, things like transparency and showing us the gaming and stuff like that, and pulling out an E3 and all this other stuff, maybe that wasn't best for the platform long term. But PlayStation is course correcting. I think they made the right move with Nishino where he's at, and I think things are going to restabilize itself. And really, you know, the sky's the limit for PlayStation right now. Their biggest competitor has bowed out, and I think we got some great stuff coming along the way. So, but I just want to take some time, talk to you guys about what's going on the business side of it, try to give you my take on the Yoshida stuff. We're going to talk about it during the podcast. So if you're watching this as a separate video, stay tuned. Go check the card to your left. All right. And enjoy. If you're watching this as part of the podcast, just stay tuned. It'll pop. We'll pop up soon. With that said, we appreciate everybody. Till next time, have a wonderful gaming day. Peace.